you're limiting your capability, you're limiting your market to only that small local traffic. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Like you can, like obviously there are a lot of businesses other than restaurant industry in this world. It's just their potential target audience is the local traffic, and there's nothing wrong with that. It only means that's the biggest factor that makes that business model extremely difficult to operate and to market. That's the biggest hurdle. That's the biggest disadvantage of a restaurant business.
Hey guys, welcome to Business Chef Podcast, where we talk about how to make content, personal brand, and monetize your skills online other than working in the kitchen, so that you can have multiple income sources to feed your family, live better life, and most importantly, love yourself as a chef. I'm on my journey building $1 million empire, documenting my process, and I'm sharing with all of you. So please share and enjoy.
This is why you should never open a restaurant as your first business. So just brief story of mine. I've been a chef for 10 years. I'm working in the restaurant industry in the kitchen. Starting my first job as a kitchen apprentice, kitchen assistant, just organizing fridge, getting all the stuff into the walk-in fridge, helping cooks, just getting them whatever they want. That was basically my first job. And then I worked my way up to, from a dishwasher, being a line cook, to a sous chef. And then everything was going well. I found a good company. I was working pretty well. Everything was going with the flow. Nothing was pretty much wrong, and COVID happened, and suddenly everyone just got laid off, and everyone lost a job, and everyone just were forced to stay at home and do nothing. And at that point, I decided to start my own business, because I somehow came to a realization that working in a company is not going to sustain my life for a longer term. Since I had a good hobby that I had passion that I enjoyed doing, which was taking videos, like making videos. That was basically my hard side hustle, right? Back then, even before COVID. So during COVID, I decided to open my first business. I decided to start my business, and obviously it was not a restaurant, because COVID, during lockdowns, nobody could go out. The city was empty. So it was obviously, it was not even an option. It was, of course, it was a terrible idea to open a restaurant during that timeline, but obviously it was not even in my option. Since I was good at making videos, since I was good at taking photos, since I had good enough knowledge about operating camera, so I decided to how about if I just make some money with taking videos, right? I mean, it's not that difficult. It doesn't cost a whole lot of money. I don't need a studio. I can just be a freelancer, right? That was the whole idea back then. And I started my videography freelancer, I would say. And then I worked really hard for a couple months, 6 months, 1 year. But what I was thinking back then is if I worked really hard, if I actually tried really hard to harness my skills, I should be getting clients. If my portfolio is good, if the work that I'm creating right now is the quality of the content of the work that I'm producing is good, I thought I had to be attracting clients. I should be getting clients just automatically, without even doubt. But I quickly realized that was not the case. I waited too long for my first client to land. I had a couple of clients, but basically it was not through a marketing or proper business acquisition method. It was basically a word of mouth, or it was a friend of mine or someone who I know, someone who my friends know. They're having a wedding, so I'm just going to a wedding and then make some videos and just get paid a couple $100. Those projects were my first initial projects and first money-making videography projects, basically. So that was my first money made as a business, as a solo business. $500, $1,000 for a project. And that was a point where I was extremely fortunate that I met my business coach. I still talk to him nowadays. He's a extremely successful video agency owner. And after having a conversation with him, after having his course and everything, I realized that how important the marketing is in running any type of business, even though it's a freelancer business. I realized that I needed to have a proper customer or client acquisition channel or marketing method that I can get onto meetings on a regular basis. It can be paid ads, it can be cold calls, it can be any organic posts, it can be any types of method, but whatever I do, I had to do something in order to get clients. Like that was a big aha moment. Like the first moment when I realized that how important the marketing is in running any type of business. So that was when I actually started learning and diving deep into those marketing and sales and branding, I was into a world of marketing. There are a lot of moments where I learn and realize a lot of things. If you're consistently learning something, there's just every single day you're learning. And obviously, like you guys should know, videos are one of the most famous and main content. I would guess a lot of people are using videos nowadays to market their products, market their businesses, doing YouTube, on social media. All the mediums that are being used in social media are videos. So when I started learning marketing, I realized that it was skill stacking moment. So I learned the videography skill as a base, and I faced the first problem, which was I couldn't get any clients. And I learned how to market. I learned how to run ads, how to create sales funnels and all this marketing stuff. And I realized that it was basically another skills stacked up on top of my video skills, which I had this crazy experience. Back then it was a crazy experience. I had this leads flowing. Like the moment I started running ads, paid ads, creating organic content, I started getting this lead flowing into my CRM, people just contacting me who wish to work with me. So it was extremely crazy moment, because when I worked really hard on creating a better quality product, nobody cared. I didn't get any attention, even though I was posting consistently on my Instagram. Nobody reached out to me. Nobody knew me. Nobody knew who I was. Like nobody knew who I am. But the moment I actually started learning marketing and sales and running ads, people started giving me emails, giving me their phone numbers. That was the moment when I realized that the product is not something that matters. The product is something that fulfills my customer. But in the end, in business, the most important thing in running any type of business in this world is actually getting customers and getting clients. And I realized is that getting leads, getting customer is just a universal problem for every business owners, every entrepreneurs in this world. And how crazy is that, right? I thought it was the beginner entrepreneur, beginner freelancer problem. And I realized it's just everyone's problem. And yeah, so that's basically how everything started. That's how I came this far. That's how I'm running my video agency right now, which is my primary income source, and also working as a chef as my secondary income source right now. And because I'm having this experience, I'm creating video content for my clients, creating sales funnels, creating marketing channels, helping them increase their online revenue streams, helping my clients get more attention. And through this activity, through this operation procedures, through the lessons that I'm learning every single day, operating my video agency business, every single day, it's just crazy how I'm learning every single day that it is just how crazy it is to open a restaurant as anybody's first business. And I'm very fortunate. I think I'm very fortunate, and I feel extremely grateful that I was able to start my video content agency with $0. Obviously, I bought cameras, but yeah, comparing to opening a restaurant, which cost them like minimum $100,000, like $500,000, like even $1 million to open a restaurant. Compared to that, just buying a $5,000 camera is nothing, right? So I was extremely grateful that my first investment on my first business was actually less than $10,000 plus $20,000 on my business education. So it was like $30,000, my first investment on my first business. And it was crazy. Like compared to other people operating their restaurants, they're just all failing, getting into debts. And I think I made a pretty good, logical, rational decision. And running my marketing video content agency, I'm just realizing every single day how ignorant, how much you're losing the game of business by opening a restaurant as your first business. And there's so many reasons. And actually, here's why. So as I mentioned earlier, every business in this world, regardless of industry, the universal problem every business in this world is getting customers, getting clients. And restaurants is just one of them too, right? Every time they suffer from inflation, no customers, no nothing, low traffic, blah, 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 and all these reasons. Basically, the fundamental of those problems are customers, right? They cannot get enough customers. They cannot get more people to come into their restaurant. Like that is the problem. The first biggest disadvantage for restaurant business compared to any other business around the world is that in this era, in this world of social media, online world, internet world, restaurant is basically limiting their potential, their capabilities into their own local traffic only. So while if I run my video content agency, I can get projects from the other side of the world too. If they shoot videos, if they give me the project of editing those videos, I can work anywhere from the world, right? Like coaching business, like selling online courses, running a online platform, running selling a software, or like running a online platform, running an online market. Those kind of businesses, you can operate anywhere in the world, and your potential clients, your potential customers can be anywhere in the world. So your potential market is basically the whole world. On the other hand, restaurant is basically you're limiting your capability, you're limiting your market to only that small local traffic. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Like you can, like obviously there are a lot of businesses other than restaurant industry in this world. It's just their potential target audience is the local traffic, and there's nothing wrong with that. It only means that's the biggest factor that makes that business model extremely difficult to operate and to market. That's the biggest hurdle. That's the biggest disadvantage of a restaurant business. If your physical market is extremely narrow, like restaurant business, you have to be not with a choice. If the market becomes narrow, like restaurant business, automatically the marketing strategy or the marketing methods that have to be executed becomes extremely difficult as well. Because your potential customers are only limited to this small little town, small little city, or small little neighborhood. And even though you have this amazing space and amazing restaurant space that could attract people from 100 kilometers away, but still, like how many people would actually travel 100 kilometers to actually visit a restaurant? That must be a crazy expensive restaurant, right? So it's fundamentally extremely hard business to operate. And the reason why I'm emphasizing a difficulty level for business is because even in my experience, like your first business and even every entrepreneur that I learn from, there's no single exception. Whenever I talk to, or even when I watch those extremely successful entrepreneurs and even entrepreneurs around me, the most common advice that those people give to beginner entrepreneurs is that your first business is always going to fail. And that's true, because it's just life. The first thing that you do is not going to go well, and you fail, and you just got to learn from it. And the thing is, if you are going to fail your first business anyways, if you're going to not do well on the first thing that you do, why would you pick an option that costs you fortunate amount of money, fortunate amount of time, too much high risk? Like, why would you pick a model? Why would you pick an option like that? Like, that is the question that I actually want to ask chefs around me, like who want to open their own restaurant. Like, that is the question that I want to ask. If you can answer that question logically, rationally, if you can answer that question, I think you should. There's nothing wrong with opening a restaurant. And if you can like somehow establish a profitable restaurant business, like it becomes extremely successful. It becomes not only a successful restaurant, like you successfully built a business that's iconic, that people remember within your community. I think that's a good milestone. I think that's an extremely successful version of every entrepreneurs that we want to become. But just to me, even my first one failed, my second one failed, my third one failed, my fourth one failed, my fifth, like even the business, like not even from the business perspective, the offers, the pricing, the marketing, sales, your target potential customers, clients, everything didn't really work out for me. And a lot of successful entrepreneurs, they even say the same thing. Their first, second, third, like it goes to 10, 15, 20th, all failed, all fucked. And especially if you're just a chef, never run a business before, and you're trying to run a business like a restaurant business, it's going to be extremely hard. Not because you suck, it's because you never had experience in businesses, and your first one is always going to fail. And also restaurant business, the structure, the model itself is extremely difficult model. And the second factor factor that makes restaurant business extremely difficult model is the high sales and low profit model. I think restaurant is like a definition of a business model that has high sales and low profit model. I mean, among the businesses that everyday people can open, like not talking about those like Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies. Like if you're talking about like mom and pop shops, small brick and mortar businesses, or like freelance businesses, those agencies, like those business models that everybody can open. I mean, I would say when those business models that everybody, they dare to start as their first business. So like those, if you compare all those models, I think the restaurant business model is like the definition of high sales and low profit model. There's nothing wrong with high sales, low profit model. Like as we all say, there's high risk, high return. Like I get it. Like I'm personally a firm believer of this analogy, which is if you cannot manage $100, you cannot manage $1,000. If you cannot manage $1,000, you cannot manage $10,000. So that's like if you cannot manage $100 and save $50, if you're given $1 million, you're not gonna make $500,000. Like if you consistently get $100 as your allowance, for example, like if you're like 15 years old, if you're like 12 years old, let's say, if you get $100 as your allowance, and if you fail to manage that $100 bill, and if you go into debt, if you have to borrow another like $50 from someone else, if you have a character trait, if you have that spending habit, once you're given $1 million, you're gonna be in debt of $500,000. People think just more income, higher money will solve the problem. But I'm a very firm believer of this analogy, which is if you can't manage $3,000 your salary, you can never manage $30,000 income. And I genuinely believe in this because I also went through that. So going back to this business model, restaurant business model, like high sales, low profit, it just means that there's so much types of expenses that you gotta manage. That's what it means. There's nothing fancy or there's nothing a complicated concept behind high sales, low profit. It just literally means that there's so many types of expenses that the owner has to manage. The reason why freelancing business, running an agency business, like a beginner one-man agency business, is considered as a low risk, easy difficulty level business is because once you make $10,000, you can take home $8,000. It means 80% profit. So it just simply means that there's not really much expense to manage. And if you actually get into life, if we compare that concept into our life, if you live a life that has less types of expenses, your life is simply easier, right? Like relatively easier than other people. If you make, let's say, if you have a full-time job and you make $3,000 a month, and all you pay every single month is just your rent, your food, probably going to gym and transportation. If that's all you basically pay, your life is simply easier. But once you marry, once you have to buy a house, once you have a kid, once you have a car, once you have a mortgage, once you start having all those types of expenses, your life suddenly becomes harder and harder. And that's exactly the same concept of business as well. If you run a business that has less types of expense, for example, running an agency, running a freelance business, if the only business expense that you spend every single month is basically like some couple subscriptions online, like Adobe Photoshop Premiere Pro, some transportations going for a meeting, and a couple $100 for delivering your service to your clients, if that's all you spend, the difficulty level is much lower. It's easier to operate that kind of business. But once you operate a restaurant where you have to manage freaking labor, food cost, and again, the food cost inventory shit is extremely hard for beginners to learn. And even though you're a chef for an extremely long time, if you haven't properly learned these skills, it's going to be extremely hard. Again, you have labor, food costs, you have rent, right? You have all these utilities, these furnitures, interiors, and all your contractors, hydro, water, like equipments, and all those things that you gotta manage. That just makes this business model extremely difficult. I mean, like, why would you want to pick this kind of difficult business model as your first business? That's my question. I understand that your natural thought process as an experienced chef is opening a restaurant. I get it. Like that's a very natural thing. I never want to blame anybody for thinking like that. But it's just a question. It's just a simple question that I want to throw at you from this logical, a rational approach to business. Then now you guys might be like, then what the fuck should I do? There's nothing I can do other than cooking. Like what the hell, right? I know this might not be your thing, and this might not sound appealing enough, right? So approaching a business like this, and let's say this all makes sense to you, right? The most logical approach that you should think about as a chef, like your best strategical move that you can make as a chef if you want to start your first business, is basically doing a freelance business, in my opinion. And if you have budget, if you have a lot of money to spend, go ahead, open a restaurant. If spending $1 million on a restaurant, that's a challenge, if that's something that you can spend without any problem, I think you should go for it. Even though you lose everything, if that doesn't bother your life, if that doesn't cause any financial problem in your life, I think that's genuinely a good challenge that you should do as a chef, right? But if that's not the case, if you don't have any $1 million, if you don't have like couple $100,000 to invest to start a first business, I think the best strategical move that you need to make as a chef is basically running a freelance business. And that can be basically anything. Personal chef is a freelance business, right? Meal kit business is a freelance business, is a one-man business. The thing that you want to learn from your first business is not to be successful. It's actually learning the fundamental and learning what's necessary to run a profitable business. I think that's the most important lesson that you need to learn from your first business. Because when I actually look back, like 2-3 years ago, when I first doing my videography freelance, like I didn't know shit. Like even now, I know more than 3 years ago. It doesn't mean that I'm super successful now. I'm super a freaking millionaire, billionaire right now. I know at some point I'm gonna be there. And even now, I'm building my knowledge, I'm building my skills, I'm building my experience to get there. And that's the approach that you want to make when it comes to approaching running a business as a chef, in my opinion. So I'm not telling you to run a personal chef business or a private chef business or a meal prep chef business to become a super successful Gordon Ramsay style chef in your city or in the whole country. I'm not saying this will make your reputation like that. No, it's not going to. The reason why I suggest running this kind of freelance business is because I want you to learn what's actually necessary and what you have to learn in the future to run a profitable business. Like I want you to make a strategical move rather than just being successful on the first year. And I genuinely don't think that's gonna happen. And I really think a super firm, stable, strong success takes time. I genuinely believe in that value. For my personal experience, running my first business, the biggest lesson that I've learned is how important the marketing and sales is. And the problem is, and this also relates to a lot of restaurant owners that actually fail their business, right? Is because they start their first business as a restaurant, that difficult model, without even realizing how important marketing and sales is. And if you think about it, a lot of restaurants out there, like more than half, I would say 9%, 99.9% of restaurants that fail is because they have zero idea of how important marketing and sales is and how important it is to implement those knowledge and skills and system into their business. That's why they fail. It's not because their food is shit, blah, blah. No. That's not the reason. I've seen too many restaurants that have amazing chef with crazy amount of experience, super nice food, high grade premium food or product fail after a year and a half, even within 2 years. If your current belief of having a nice food leads to success is actually true, if it's universal truth, why do you think all these restaurants are going out of business when they still have amazing food and service, right? And that answer you can actually find if you start learning marketing and sales.
Real quick, guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, I don't run any ads on this. I don't sell anything. So the only ads that I have is that help me spread the word so that we can help more chefs monetize their skills online, make more money, and have their own successful restaurants. The only way we do that is we rate, review, and share this podcast. If you find this podcast valuable, leave a review. It takes 5 seconds, and most importantly, it may change the world for the better.